If you do these 6 things, you're sabotaging your growth. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman, smart, beautiful, capable. On the outside, she seemed to have it all. Her hair was always just right, her clothes perfectly styled, and her life, at least online, looked like something out of a dream. She had followers, attention, and applause. But here's the thing. When the lights were off, when no one was watching, she didn't like who she was. Not really. She couldn't stand the silence, the stillness, or the questions that came late at night. The ones that asked, "Is this all there is?" Or worse, "Who have I become?" That woman, she could be any one of us. She could be you. She could be me. Because being foolish doesn't always look foolish from the outside. Sometimes it looks polished, put together, even successful. But inside, it's empty. It's restless. It's disconnected from purpose. And that's what we're here to talk about. Now, before you brace yourself, thinking this is going to be some judgmental list of reasons why you're not measuring up, relax. That's not the point. I'm not here to point fingers. I'm not above you. I'm right beside you. This isn't about shame. This is about awareness. Growth, choice. Because here's the truth. We all have foolish habits. Every single one of us. But most of us are too busy, too distracted, or too afraid to call them out. And that's where the Stoics come in. See, thousands of years ago, a group of philosophers, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, started asking some deep questions. Questions about life, suffering, virtue, character, peace. But the answers they found weren't buried in some academic textbook or locked behind complicated theories. Their answers were simple, practical, and brutally honest. They believed that a wise life wasn't about intellect. It was about how you live, how you carry yourself when things fall apart, how you treat others when no one's keeping score, how you respond when life punches you in the gut. They believed that foolishness had nothing to do with IQ and everything to do with how far you've drifted from your values, from reason, from your true self. And today, that wisdom is more relevant than ever. We live in a world that celebrates noise over depth, style over substance, and speed over stillness. It's so easy to get caught up in appearances, in excuses, in people-pleasing, in emotional outbursts, in the craving for more, and in the constant running from our own reflection. But what the Stoics knew, and what we sometimes forget, is that none of that leads to peace. None of that leads to wisdom. None of that leads to the kind of life we truly want. So in this conversation, I want to walk with you through 6 patterns that the Stoics would say reflect foolishness. Not so you can feel bad, but so you can start to shift. These 6 signs, they're like warning lights on the dashboard of your soul. They're not final, they're just signals. And if we're brave enough to look at them honestly, they can guide us toward a better, wiser, more grounded life. Now let me say this again. This isn't just about some other woman. This is about all of us. I've lived these signs. You probably have too. But wisdom isn't about having a perfect track record. It's about what you choose to do next. Right now. Today. If you're tired of living on autopilot, if you're done chasing things that never satisfy, if you want to wake up proud of the person you're becoming, then you're in the right place. We're not just going to talk about what foolishness looks like. We're going to talk about how to move through it, how to recognize it, how to turn it around. And by the end of this, I hope you'll not only see yourself more clearly, but also feel more hopeful, more empowered, and more committed to living wisely. So take a deep breath, drop the defenses, and open yourself up to this one simple question. What kind of woman am I becoming? Because no matter where you've been, wisdom is always an option. And it starts right now. Ready? Let's go. Sign 1. Prioritizing appearance over character. Let's start with something that's easy to fall into, especially in the world we live in today. Putting way too much focus on how we look and not nearly enough on who we are. And look, I get it. We live in a world that's constantly telling us how to be prettier, thinner, younger, more stylish. You scroll through social media for 5 minutes and suddenly you're thinking your hair needs fixing, your wardrobe needs upgrading, and your smile needs whitening. It's exhausting. And yet it's so normal that most of us don't even question it. We just jump on the treadmill and keep running. We spend hours choosing the right outfit, the right angle for a selfie, the right caption that makes it look like we have it all together. But here's the thing, none of that sticks. None of that fills the hole inside that whispers, am I really enough? What the Stoics believed, and what they were so clear about, is that your value has absolutely nothing to do with your appearance. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." In other words, it's your mind, your heart, your values. Those are the things that truly define you, not your eyeliner, not your waistline, not the number of people who double tap your photo. Now let me be real with you. There's nothing wrong with taking care of yourself. There's nothing wrong with dressing well or wearing makeup or enjoying fashion. That can be an expression of confidence, of self-respect. But the problem starts when you put more effort into your image than your character. When you're more invested in your appearance than in your personal growth. Because eventually, the outside fades. That's just life. Your body changes, trends change, beauty standards change. But who you are on the inside, that's what people remember. That's what carries you through. Think about it. Have you ever met someone who looked amazing, but the moment they spoke, it was all negativity, insecurity, or surface-level fluff? It's like unwrapping a beautiful present and finding nothing inside. Now, flip it. Think of someone who just radiates peace, strength, kindness. Someone who might not fit the mold of conventional beauty, but they walk into a room and you feel better just being near them. That's real. That's powerful. That's who we should be striving to become. The Stoics would tell us to turn inward. Ask yourself, what am I feeding my mind? How do I treat people? Am I honest? Am I kind? Am I growing? Because at the end of the day, that's what defines a wise woman. Not her lipstick shade, not her shoes, but her integrity, her grace, her courage. So the next time you catch yourself obsessing over your reflection or wondering how you stack up against someone else, pause. Turn the mirror inward. Ask yourself, who am I becoming? Because that's the question that matters. That's the question that changes lives. Sign 2. Ignoring self-responsibility. Now, let's talk about something that often sneaks into our lives without us even realizing it. Blaming everything and everyone else for what's going wrong. I know it's uncomfortable to admit, but let's go there. Have you ever had one of those seasons where everything feels off? Your job is stressing you out. Your relationships feel messy. Your plans aren't working the way you hoped. And the story playing in your head is something like, if my boss wasn't such a nightmare, or if my partner would just understand me, or if life wasn't so unfair, I'd be okay. Sound familiar? It's so easy to fall into that trap. It feels safe. It feels like protection. Because if everything is someone else's fault, then we don't have to do anything about it, right? We can just wait for the world to fix itself while we stay right where we are. But that's not growth. That's not power. That's not wisdom. The Stoics believed something radically different. They taught that while we may not control what happens to us, we always always control how we respond. Epictetus said it best. We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. That's not just a cute quote. It's a call to action. It means you can take your power back, starting right now. It means no more waiting for someone to change before you start healing. No more blaming your past for why you can't move forward. No more pointing fingers when what you really need to do is point inward. Let me ask you a hard question, and I want you to sit with it, not flinch away from it. What am I avoiding responsibility for in my life right now? Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's your finances. Maybe it's the way you speak to the people you love. Maybe it's the job you keep showing up to even though it's draining your soul, and you haven't taken one real step toward changing it. Whatever it is, I promise you this. The moment you stop waiting for someone else to fix it, you start to change your life. This isn't about guilt. It's not about blame. It's about ownership. About looking at your life with clear eyes and saying, "This is mine. I may not have created every problem, but I'm the one responsible for what happens next." And let me tell you, that mindset shift, it's powerful. It's freeing, because once you take responsibility, the possibilities open up. You stop being stuck. You stop being helpless. You start becoming the kind of woman who faces challenges with courage, who turns struggle into strength, who doesn't wait to be rescued because she's busy rescuing herself. So if you've been carrying around excuses, if you've been waiting for perfect conditions or blaming someone else for your pain, it's time to let that go. It's time to own your story. Because when you do, you stop being a victim of your circumstances and start becoming the author of your future. And that's the path of wisdom. That's the woman you were always meant to be, ready for what's next. Let's keep going. Sign 3, living for the approval of others. You know exactly what I'm talking about. That moment when you're about to make a decision. Maybe it's posting something, wearing something, saying something, and instead of asking yourself, "Do I want this?" you pause and think, "But what will they think?" It's subtle. Sometimes you don't even notice it happening. But that tiny pause, that hesitation, that's where self-abandonment begins. That's where you start trading your voice for approval, your authenticity for applause. And look, we all want to be liked. We're wired for connection. But there's a difference between valuing relationships and letting other people's opinions control your life. There's a line, and the moment you cross it, you stop living for yourself. The Stoics had zero patience for this kind of living. Marcus Aurelius once said, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but we care more about their opinion than our own." That quote stopped me in my tracks the first time I read it. Because it's true. We live inside our own minds 24/7. We know our own stories, our struggles, our values. And yet we let someone else's opinion, someone who might not even really know us, have the final say in our decisions. That's madness. And we've all done it. We let people who don't walk in our shoes decide which path we take. We let people who don't carry our pain determine how we should heal. We let people's reactions dictate our dreams, our joy, our worth. But here's what the Stoics would remind you. You don't owe anyone your conformity. You owe yourself your integrity. And no, that doesn't mean you become cold or shut people out or stop listening altogether. It just means you stop living like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. It means you get real with yourself. You ask, what do I believe? What feels right to me? Would I still make this choice if nobody clapped, nobody watched, nobody approved? That kind of self-trust, that's rare. That's powerful. That's wise. So if you've been holding back because of what people might think, If you've been editing yourself to stay likable, shrinking yourself to stay accepted, let me gently remind you, the cost of that approval is way too high. You weren't made to blend in. You weren't born to be everyone's favorite. You were born to be real, to be strong, to be deeply yourself, even if it makes some people uncomfortable. Especially then, because when you finally stop chasing validation and start walking in truth, something incredible happens. You become unshakable. You start attracting the right people, the right opportunities, the right peace. Not because you're performing, but because you're finally aligned. So ask yourself now, whose voice have I been prioritizing over my own? And more importantly, am I ready to take it back? That question leads us into another big one, maybe the biggest of all. How do you handle your emotions? Or better yet, do your emotions handle you? Sign 4, emotional instability, overreaction. Let's be honest, we've all had moments when something small triggered something big. A snarky comment turns into a full-blown argument. A minor inconvenience ruins your whole day. You snap at someone you love not because they did anything terrible, but because your cup was already full of stress, frustration, exhaustion. And then comes the guilt, the regret, the internal spiral of why did I do that again? The Stoics believed that this kind of emotional volatility is one of the clearest signs of a foolish life. Not because emotions are bad, but because letting them rule you means you're not in control. Seneca said, "A man is as unhappy as he has convinced himself he is." Meaning, our emotions don't come from what happens. They come from how we interpret what happens. That little quote, it's life-changing because it reminds you that you have a choice. You can't always control what happens. The traffic jam, the rude cashier, the bad day, those things will come whether you like it or not. But you always get to choose how you respond. You can pause. You can breathe. You can let the feeling rise, and then let it pass without dragging it into your next decision, your next conversation, your next hour. That pause, that's where wisdom lives. And no, it doesn't mean you never feel things. You're human. You're supposed to feel. You're supposed to care deeply. But the goal isn't to suppress emotion, it's to master it. To feel fully without reacting destructively. The Stoics practiced this. They trained their minds daily to stay grounded when things got messy. They reminded themselves constantly, this is outside my control. My response is not. And that mental shift, that's how you stop overreacting and start responding with strength and clarity. So let me ask you something, and answer honestly. When was the last time you let your emotions hijack your day? When was the last time you said something in anger that you wished you could take back? It happens. But here's the good news. You can catch it. You can slow down. You can build that inner space between trigger and reaction. Start small. Next time something upsets you, do nothing for 10 seconds. Just breathe. That's it. Just breathe. Feel the heat, feel the rise, and give yourself a second to choose a better response. Over time, that small pause becomes a powerful habit. And here's what happens when you start responding instead of reacting. People respect you more. You respect yourself more. You gain influence. You build trust. You create peace, inside and out. Emotional stability isn't coldness. It's strength. It's leadership. It's what wise women carry with them wherever they go. So if you've been feeling like your emotions are running the show, it's time to take the reins. Not with judgment, not with shame, but with the quiet confidence that says, I am in charge of how I show up. And showing up with calm, grounded wisdom, that's not just stoic, it's revolutionary. Sign 5. Materialism and greed. And now, let's talk about something that touches nearly every part of modern life. Our obsession with more. More stuff. More status, more money, more everything. It's kind of wild, isn't it? We live in a time where you can order something online at midnight and have it on your doorstep before lunch. We're constantly being told that happiness is just one purchase away, one promotion away, one big shiny milestone away. And we believe it, at least for a while, until we get the thing and the high wears off and we're left looking for the next fix. It's like chasing the horizon. No matter how far you run, it keeps moving. But here's what the Stoics knew, and what we often forget in a world that equates worth with wealth. They believed that the more you crave, the less you own your peace. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." That hits deep, doesn't it? Because think about it. How many people do you know who have everything they could possibly need, but they're still miserable? They've got the car, the house, the designer bags. But inside, there's this quiet desperation, this constant emptiness they can't seem to fill. And on the flip side, maybe you've met someone who lives simply, who doesn't flash anything fancy, but they have this lightness to them, this contentment. That's not a coincidence. When you tie your self-worth to what you own, you build your foundation on sand. Things break, trends change, money comes and goes. But your values, your joy, your purpose, those are the real riches, and they can't be bought, they're built. Now let me be clear. I'm not saying money is bad or that success is something to avoid, not at all. What I'm saying is, don't let your desire for more rob you of what you already have. Don't let the hunger for status distract you from substance. Because if you're constantly chasing, constantly comparing, constantly needing something else to feel okay, you'll never stop running, and you'll miss the good stuff that's already right in front of you. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just pause and ask yourself, what am I chasing right now? And why do I think I need it? Is it because it genuinely aligns with who you are and what you value? Or is it just another attempt to fill a hole that can't be filled with stuff? The Stoics had a practice called voluntary discomfort. They would deliberately go without things, just to prove to themselves that they could. It wasn't about punishing themselves, it was about freedom. It was about reminding themselves, I am okay without this. I'm still me. That kind of mindset builds strength. It builds gratitude. And most importantly, it builds peace. So if you've been caught in the loop of more, try stepping off the treadmill. Try appreciating what already is. Because when you stop needing so much, you start enjoying so much more. And that brings us to something that might be the hardest of all. Not because it's loud, but because it's quiet. It's the habit that hides in busyness, in distraction, in the little ways we avoid ourselves. Sign 6. Avoiding self-reflection and growth. I'm talking about the choice to skip self-reflection. The habit of avoiding your own inner world. Let's be real. Looking inward can be uncomfortable. It's so much easier to scroll, to binge, to stay busy. Because when you stop and look at yourself honestly, you might not like what you see. You might see habits that aren't serving you, patterns you've outgrown, choices you're not proud of, and facing all that takes courage. But here's the thing. If you never look, you never grow. You stay stuck in the same loops, asking why your life isn't changing, when the truth is, you haven't changed. The Stoics didn't believe in living blindly. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, one of the most powerful men in history, wrote in his journal every single day. He asked himself what he did well, where he fell short, and how he could do better. Not because he was trying to be perfect, but because he was committed to growing, to becoming the kind of man he could respect. That's what real self-reflection is. It's not about beating yourself up. It's about waking yourself up. It's about checking in and saying, am I becoming the woman I want to be? And the beautiful thing is, it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be 5 minutes at night. A quiet walk without distractions. A few honest journal questions like, what did I learn today? Or, where did I act out of fear instead of love? Or even, what would my highest self have done in that situation? You don't need a therapist or a retreat or a mountaintop to start reflecting. You just need the willingness to sit still and be honest. And if that sounds hard, that's okay. It is hard, but it's also worth it. Because the truth is, you can't heal what you won't look at. You can't change what you won't name. And you can't grow if you keep avoiding the very parts of you that need your attention the most. So, if you've been avoiding yourself, if you've been numbing, distracting, pretending, it's okay. We all do it sometimes. But let today be the day you start turning toward yourself instead of away. Not with judgment, not with shame, but with love. With curiosity. With a quiet promise that says, I'm ready to do the work. Because the work isn't about becoming someone else. It's about returning to who you really are underneath all the noise. And you are not foolish, you are not broken. You are a work in progress, like all of us. You're allowed to start again. You're allowed to grow at your own pace. And you are absolutely capable of becoming wise, not someday, not in theory, but now. Let's keep going. Conclusion. We've talked about how focusing too much on appearance can leave us hollow. We've faced the discomfort of taking responsibility for our lives instead of blaming the world. We've dug into the exhausting habit of living for approval, and we've explored how our emotions can either rule us or guide us, depending on how we respond. We've confronted the trap of materialism and the quiet cost of always wanting more. And we've finally turned the mirror on ourselves to ask the hardest but most important question. Am I willing to look inward and grow? Now maybe you're sitting there with a mix of thoughts and feelings. Maybe you're inspired. Maybe a little uncomfortable. Maybe you see yourself in every single one of these signs, or maybe just one or two. That's okay. That's actually really good, because awareness is where transformation begins. The Stoics never promised perfection. In fact, they were the first to admit how flawed we all are. Marcus Aurelius wasn't writing in his journal because he thought he was enlightened. He was writing because he wasn't. He was trying. He was growing. He was learning how to be better, more grounded, more aligned every single day. And so are you. See, wisdom isn't some mountaintop moment where you finally arrive. It's not about never messing up or having it all figured out. It's about how you respond when you do mess up. It's about what you do next. And that choice, that small, quiet decision to grow instead of retreat, that's where the real power is. Because here's the truth. You don't have to stay where you are. You don't have to keep reacting, performing, pleasing, chasing, avoiding. You don't have to live a life that looks good but feels empty. You don't have to be a prisoner to your past or your pain or your patterns. You can choose something different, right now. You can choose to shift your focus from the mirror to your heart. You can choose to own your life, all of it. The mistakes, the mess, the beauty. You can choose to listen to your own voice instead of everyone else's. You can learn to pause instead of explode. You can find contentment in the simple, in the stillness, in what already is. And you can start to reflect, not as a punishment, but as a gift to yourself, a promise that you're worth the work. And you are. You really are. The journey from foolishness to wisdom isn't loud. It doesn't always look impressive from the outside. but it's the most powerful thing you'll ever do. Because when you commit to becoming wise, when you start to live with intention, with virtue, with reason, you change everything. Your relationships shift, your energy changes, your confidence grows, not the kind that's built on image or applause, but the kind that's rooted in peace, in clarity, in truth. And that's the kind of woman the world needs. A woman who knows who she is, not because someone told her, but because she's done the work to find out. A woman who doesn't need to prove anything, but who lives with quiet strength and steady purpose. A woman who's not afraid to admit when she's wrong, because she knows her worth isn't based on being flawless. It's based on being real. You don't get there all at once. You get there moment by moment, choice by choice. And if there's one thing I hope you take from all of this, it's that you are capable of that. You are already on the path. You are already asking the right questions. And the fact that you're still here, still listening, still reflecting, that means something. That matters. So here's what I want to leave you with. Take one of these 6 signs, just one, and spend the next 7 days working on it. Not perfectly, just intentionally. Maybe it's being more mindful about how much you care about others' opinions. Maybe it's choosing to pause before reacting emotionally. Maybe it's starting a journal, even if it's just 1 sentence a day. Small steps. Big change. And while you're doing that, give yourself grace. Growth isn't linear. You'll stumble, you'll forget. That's human. What matters is that you keep coming back, that you keep choosing to show up, that you don't give up on the woman you're becoming. Because she's strong, she's wise, she's rising. And if this conversation has stirred something in you, if it made you think or reflect or feel less alone, then I invite you to share it. Not for numbers, not for attention, but because maybe someone you love needs this message too. Maybe they're tired of chasing, of pretending, of feeling stuck. Maybe they need a reminder that it's okay to start again. Leave a comment. Let me know which of these signs hit home for you. Let's talk about it. Let's grow together. Because this path of wisdom, it's not meant to be walked alone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being brave enough to look within. Thank you for being willing to evolve. And remember, this isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of a wiser, freer, more grounded chapter. Keep going. Keep growing. And never forget, you've got this. I'll see you in the next one.